In September of 2001, Bill Gove, my business partner, the father of professional speaking, and myself were appointed by President George W. Bush to the National Charity Awards Committee. And we were on there with Merv Griffin and Cheryl Ladd and a bunch of actors and politicians and celebrities. And they were all planning on gathering on December 9th, 21 years ago today, December 9th, 2001, for basically a giant fundraiser. And I was speaking, Bill Gove was speaking, President Bush, of course, was speaking. Doug Weed was the master of ceremonies. We had Mark Victor Hansen with us, Bob Proctor. We had a lot of top politicians. It was kind of a who's who. It was $1,000 a ticket to get in. And Bill and I were really, really excited about it. So we practiced and rehearsed. We're going to be on stage with the president. It's going to be fantastic. And we were scheduled, of course, for December 9th to be on stage. And on December 7th, the night of December 7th, about 11 o'clock at night, Bill Gove called me. He was 89 years old at the time, almost 90, about a month away from being 90. He called me and said, I really don't feel well. I'm not sure what to do, but can you take me to the hospital? So I drove over to his house about 5 miles away, took him to the hospital. He was in the hospital all night. I stayed with him. And I spoke to the doctor and I said, we're scheduled to speak on stage with the President of the United States at the Hilton Washington on the 9th, which was basically the next day. And the doctor said, he can't fly. He's not going anywhere. He has congestive heart failure. I'm not sure he's going to make it out of the hospital, really. And I was just shocked. I mean, I knew he had congestive heart failure, but I went back to Bill and I said, I'm not going to go without you. We do this. For 5 years, we've been on stages together all over the world and, nonstop. And I'm not speaking with our biggest speech without you. And Bill said, if you ever knew Bill Gove, you would not be surprised. He said, Steve, it's the President of the United States. You have to go. You have to. You have to go whether I'm there or not. You just have to go. And I said, Bill, I'm not going to leave you. And he says, you have to leave me. He goes, I trained you for this. He goes, I trained you for your moment, to prepare for your opportunity. Now you have your opportunity. You have it. You're ready. You've been preparing for this for years. You've got to go and you've got to take that opportunity. And it was really hard to do because we spoke on stage together for 5 straight years. It's all we did, nonstop. And that was the first time I ever spoke, I think, without him, except maybe in corporate a few times. And so I did what he told me to do. And I went to Hilton Washington and did the program and did the fundraiser and everything. And it went fine. It was really tough to do without him. But I did it. And Bill Gove died on that day, December 9th, 2001. And we did a Bill Gove speech workshop, the famous Bill Gove speech workshop, trained all the top speakers that weekend at the Hilton Washington in D.C. And that was a tough weekend to get through. He was my best friend, even though we were 53 years apart in age. We traveled with someone for nonstop for 5 years, and that's just, he was just, a wonderful guy and the best friend. And I guess the lesson I wanted to get across with this as a speaker is always be ready for your opportunity. Because I thought that was going to be the most fun speech that Bill and I would have ever done. I mean, I was looking forward to that. We were laughing about it. We had made fun of George W. Bush so many times. All of a sudden, then we get about 3 months before in Phoenix, we got appointed directly by the president to this committee. And it's kind of fun because we were making fun of him and Al Gore and a lot of politicians and speeches all over the country and some overseas. And we never thought we would get the call from the president of the United States to speak with him at this charity fundraiser, but we did. And so we thought it would be the most fun thing. We were looking forward to it. And on that day that we looked so forward to, Bill Gove died. And I still had to go on stage. And if you've ever gone on stage where you were just, when something like that happens to you and it's just, it's surreal. You have to put it on autopilot. It's so hard to be present. And I tried really hard, but I did exactly what we rehearsed. And that really was the last lesson Bill Gove taught me before he passed away that day was you always have to be ready. Because I'll tell you what, I'll be honest with you. I was so excited about that speech before. The President of the United States, I was speaking at Kiwanis clubs 5 years before, at the Motel 6 or the Howard Johnson's or the Holiday Inn Kiwanis Club for 14 people, and half of them had their backs toward me, and for free, and all of a sudden 5 years later, I'm keynoting with the President of the United States, the most powerful person in the world, and that's, how does something like that happen, right? Well, that was because of my mentor, Bill Gove. And so it went from being this unbelievably exciting celebration to this it was hard not to just cry on stage. I mean, it literally was hard not to just break down. And I know people said, well, he was almost 90 years old. He was a month away from being 90 years old, Steve. And we knew he was sick for a while. But when it's your best friend and your mentor and you spend 5 straight years together, it wasn't like he was 90 years old. It was like he was my best friend, and he was. And but that was the last lesson he taught me on one of the biggest stages in the world. And that was, you have to go on. The show must go on, and you have to be prepared for your opportunity. Luckily, I got through the speech. I didn't enjoy it. I will tell you, no uncertain terms, it was not a fun speech. I don't ever look back on that speech because I almost don't remember. If it wasn't such a big deal, I wouldn't have remembered it because I just had it on autopilot. I did the best I could, but I was really hurting. And so you just have to be ready. The show must go on, and you have to be ready for the show. And the last thing I want to wrap up with was something that because this is the day Bill Gove died, December 9th, 2001. This is 21 years later. Hard to believe for me. But one of the greatest lessons he taught me is you never know as a speaker. And if you're a speaker or you're an emerging speaker, please hear me, because this might make a difference for you, okay? You never know when your giant opportunity that might come once in a lifetime, once. I never got called again since to speak with the President of the United States. I've spoken all over the world since then and done very well as a speaker, but I've never been called to the White House or to speak with any other president of the United States, and it's unlikely to ever happen again. That was my one shot, and you have to be ready for it. Make sure you're practicing. Make sure you're not phoning it in. Make sure that you're rehearsing like crazy. The old story about the Bill Gove graduate since 1947 is when you're on a speaking tour with a bunch of speakers, during at night or on the weekends, most of the speakers are in the bar having a good time, taking a little bit of a break, which is fine. But the Gove graduates are in their hotel rooms rehearsing. We're known as over-rehearsers. Practice, 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 practice. And I was a professional athlete, a minor league professional athlete, but still a professional athlete and a pretty good junior athlete. And I will tell you, it's the same philosophy. You over-practice. You practice, 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 because your opportunity, if you stay in the game long enough, if you stay as a speaker, if you stay in this game long enough, most likely your break will come. But it might come next week. And you have to be ready. You have to prepare, prepare, prepare. And Bill told me that from the first time I went to the Bill Gove speech workshop. He beat that in my head. He said, you have to treat it like you did tennis. Practice, practice. You feel like it, great. You don't feel like it, great. It makes no difference whatsoever. You show up for practice and you rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. And when other people say, oh, you're rehearsing too much, you smile and go back to rehearsal. Because someday you're going to have your opportunity and you can't cram for that opportunity. It's not like a test. You either have those skills polished at that level or you don't. And again, you might end up on stage with the President of the United States or something like that. You just don't know in this business. The speaking business, when you're in this business and you start to get up to the higher fee levels, you start meeting movie stars, politicians, heads of state, very important people, hedge fund managers, people that are they're running the world, running countries. I mean, it's amazing because you're crossing paths. You're in the media, you're on television, you're on radio. I mean, I could tell you stories for, hours and hours about all these people that I've met over the years because of public speaking, because that's what conventions and meetings and public speaking attracts. And so when you get in their company, when you get your shot, you got to be ready. So prepare, prepare, prepare. And always remember Bill Gove, the father of professional speaking. January 25th, 1912 to December 9th, 2001. He was the best of the best.